All right, and again, I can edit some of this out. So like this words right now, edit out. So let's start with this. Itzik, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got started in mental performance training and what specifically who you work with?
So I work as a mental performance coach with youth, college, and professional athletes and players, specifically soccer players. And I got into this whole thing because I was always been fascinated ever since I was a little kid with the mental aspect of the games. And as I grew older and experienced different things, I saw how I let certain mental barriers bring me down and stop me from becoming what I could have been and reach my full potential. And if I had someone kind of guide me or shift my perspective, I think I really would have made it a lot further. And that's kind of one of the things that I want to give back to youth players specifically, and just kind of open up their horizon, understand that there's another aspect of the game. It's not just their technique or their physicality, but the mental game is just as critical, if not more critical than anything else. And my objective is just to educate coaches, parents, and players that this is existing, and teach them certain tools and techniques so they can, have that key and break through and really reach their full potential, whatever that may be for each individual.
And your main focus is on soccer. Is that the sport that you focus on mostly?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, played my entire life, played Division I soccer, played through the club ranks and everything like that. So I've been through the game. I know the game. I live the game. And so while this stuff does obviously translate to other athletes and other sports, my common language is definitely soccer.
Gotcha. And G, what about you? How did you get started in this? What was the thing that triggered you to kind of get into the mental aspect of sports?
So I got started with mental performance after I graduated college and played a few years semi-pro. I started doing skills and development coaching with girls athletes in my area. A lot of the parents knew of me because my it was a small town, so I did some skills and development on the court with them. So as I was teaching them, layups, right hand, left hand, and jump shots and whatnot on the court, our sessions began to shift to me actually teaching them about their mindset. And at that time, I didn't know there was such thing called as mental performance. I was just giving them what I went through in my high school and college career, and just feeding them tips, what I went through and how I was able to overcome some boundaries, some barriers when I played. And so I started getting emails from the parents saying, not only is my child physically getting better, but mentally something is different about her. And so I was thinking to myself, okay, so I guess I'm changing these athletes' mindset. Let me do a quick Google search and see if there's anything such as mental performance or mental toughness training. And quite a few came up, and that's when I was obsessed with it. I was like, wow, there's actually something here that targets the mindset of athletes. This is amazing. So I just dove right into it, did as much research as I can. And even before I dived into mental performance, I was such a person who was always, I always put goals in front of me, made a plan, and I was always disciplined and always motivated. So, and I think those are some core things when it comes to mental performance. So again, I gone through a few certifications, and I knew this is what I wanted to do. A lot of coaches focus on the physical part because, one, they don't understand that mental performance is out there, or they don't know mental performance out there, or they don't have time to teach it. So this is why I'm like, you know what, let me do this for the coaches and the athletes. So I specifically work with girls basketball players. I do some coaching with boys, but being that I'm a female and I can relate to them a little bit more, I like to work with female athletes. Right now is middle school and high school and college, and I would like to get into the pros. So that is what I have my eyes set on. My nickname is actually Goal Getter G, because I love goals and I love to aim and accomplish them. So that's what I like to do, and that's how I got into mental performance.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, and I think we all have this similar background in that we've kind of gone to what we know, right? So for me, I'm mostly doing wrestling, and that's kind of led by and lacrosse, and then that leads me also into combat sports. So that's kind of like where we've been coaching. So I've been coaching for years in wrestling, and the thing that got me started was at younger, being an athlete, and then also adapting it myself, kept hearing those same words, like telling kids, you got to focus. I'm teaching the athletic side of it for sure. And then I'm telling kids, you got to focus, or I'm hearing that, got to focus, got to concentrate, get your head in the game, shake it off, next play, all that kind of stuff. And I started to realize that I'm not telling them how to do it, right? I'm telling them what to do, but I'm not telling them how to do it. And I started thinking for lacrosse, for example, if I went and told a kid who never played lacrosse before, if I just said to him, here's the stick, go get me a ground ball, but I didn't teach him backhand down and I didn't teach him scoop through, right? And I didn't teach him those things, he'd probably look pretty stupid trying to get that ground ball. And I started to put that together and go like, well, when I tell you to focus, if you don't really know how to do that, if you don't have a drill that can teach you that, then I'm really kind of doing you a disservice. And then when I look back at the athletes I've had who have really succeeded and done well, we either developed something mentally or they had something mentally that other kids didn't have, right? And some people do just have it, and most people don't, and you can develop it. And so I got involved like you did and started saying, there's more to this than just the physicality of it. And I think that I can do a lot of good with learning the mental game, and that's kind of where I am. So same page as you guys. Is there anything specific about your sport, G, that that's different, you think, than other sports? As Itzik said earlier, it translates to every other, what we teach translates to all sports, even out of sports. But is there anything specific to your sport, or is it just your comfort that you have with that sport that makes you kind of be with girls basketball?
Oh, it's definitely my comfort. When I started playing basketball in 8th grade. I moved from New York to Pennsylvania, and it was such a culture shock because New York to Pennsylvania is very, very different. And so I did not know how to play the game of basketball, no clue. And, in my effort to make some friends, they asked, hey, do you play basketball? And I completely lied and said, yes, I know how to play. And so first time I touched the basketball, I was just awful, but I love the game. So I taught myself how to play the game of basketball. And within a year later, going to my 9th grade, I ended up being a starter on the high school varsity team. So when I talk to my athlete about the 3Ds, determination, discipline, and dedication, that's what, to me, when it comes to mental toughness, you have to have those 3Ds as well. So when it comes to coaching girls basketball, I'm just obsessed with it. And again, I mentioned I do work with boys as well. It's all the same thing. Like you said, you could use it in sports, you could use it in your life as well. But again, when it comes to girls basketball, that's what I relate to most. I see me in them, and I'm saying to myself, I used to be just like you. So to be able to relate to them, to be able to have a great partnership with them, some of them call me sis, like I'm their big sister. So I absolutely love it. So I have that connection with girls basketball, and that's something that I really want to take further to the pros, like I said earlier.
Yeah, I think as both of you said, it translates. But the thing that I found is that each sport has its own culture, right? You walk into a football locker room, it's completely different than walking into a wrestling room or a basketball gym. Walking into a boxing gym is completely different than all of them, right? So I think that's what maybe lends us go to those sports, because we feel comfortable in that environment. What about you, Itzik? Is that same thing for you, where you kind of feel just, there's a comfort level, you grew up with this sport, and I know I've seen you do a couple of presentations for larger groups, and if I didn't know who you were talking to, it could be anybody, right? If I didn't know it was soccer, it could have been anybody. So,
Absolutely.
Tell me about that, about your mindset there.
I mean, just like the two of you mentioned, there's no doubt. You feel comfortable where you came from, right? So I know the soccer language, the lingo, but the reality of it is, Gary, is that when I talk to my athletes, a lot of the soccer lingo, that's just the language, right? But the concepts are all life related. And my objective with my athletes is, how do you guys build a healthy lifestyle? All right, how can you have a good, healthy, balanced lifestyle, not for the next 6 months or the next year, but for the rest of your life? And the tools that we teach, okay, that I know that you guys do the same. It's concepts that you need in order to hold down quality relationships. It's tools that you need to succeed academically, socially, professionally, with your job, your boss, all these things. These are the tools. Now, it just works better when I do it in soccer, because that's the common language that we both understand. But the underlying message that I'm really trying to deliver is, how can you take these tools that I'm teaching you, implement them all over your life, not just on the field? As a matter of fact, I tell my athletes, you can't just use this on the field, because it doesn't work that way. How you do some things is how you do everything. So if you want to be disciplined, you better be disciplined in how you do the dishes. and the chores around the house. If otherwise, when you come and try to take that and have that discipline on the field, it's not going to show up. You can't just turn it on and off. It doesn't work that way. And
Yeah.
so, so my underlying message is more life related. And I've said this a million times. I've learned everything I need to learn about life on the soccer field. Everything I learned, everything about my marriage, about being a father, about being a businessman. All right. Everything I've learned that I need in life, I learned on the soccer field. And I tell my players, if you play the game the right way, you love the game and you give the game what it deserves, it will give you back tenfold for the rest of your life.
Yeah, and first of all, that's great. That's great stuff, and I know that about you. I can tell that from us knowing each other a little bit. That's what you are, and I think we all have that same thing, right? And the interesting thing about that is that we take youth, and let's say we have 100 youth. Out of that 100 youth, only 50 are going to play high school, or maybe even less, right? 50 will play high school, and then out of that 50, only 10 are going to play college. So what we're doing, what we're talking about, is life skills. But at the same time, the reverse of that is the more that we teach what we teach, that 50 could be 30 going to high school. You know what I mean? And then that could be 20 going to college. We can increase those numbers if those kids are learning the skills. So while we're teaching them to be well-rounded in life, we're also kind of elevating them to be able to get to that next level and play at that next level. Right.
Which if you're saying that, isn't that, I mean, it's kind of, you can't have one without the other, right? If you're going to become a more balanced person and implement these things, then obviously you're going to succeed in your craft, whatever that craft may be. Today, it's trying to play college soccer or wrestle in college or play basketball, whatever it may be. But at the same time, other aspects of your life are being elevated as well, socially, academically, within your family structure. So everything raises. And that's the idea, is how do we raise the bar? How do we give them the tools? How do we change their perspective so they can appreciate all aspects of life? And because of that, they're going to succeed in their sport.
Yeah. And, I tell you, for me, I know working with some older athletes, not just when I work with the older ones who are 24, 20, 30, whatever, those athletes, I find that where they're really lacking is in the outside skills. When they get on the mat, or when they're in the ring, or they kind of grew up there. So they're doing most of those things correctly. And even their focus is good there. But outside, things are not together. They don't have those skills that haven't been taught yet. So there's always challenges. There's challenges on both sides. And there's challenges mean there's opportunity for us to help in different areas, whether it's,
I absolutely agree.
Right.
And and like you said, so some kids would play high school sports and then they won't go on to the college level, or there will be kids who go on to the college level and don't go to the pros. So after they're done with their athletic life, what do they have left? So like Itzik said, the tools that we're teaching them is preparing them for after sports, because not everyone is going to go to the pros. So when you're done playing your sport, I've heard a lot of athletes say, after I was done playing basketball, I had no clue what to do. I didn't know how to relate to the outside world. I did not know how to relate or communicate to people who didn't play sports. So again, with what we're teaching, it helps them on and off the court. And I'm so glad that I was able to play the game of basketball, because in each level, I was able to grow. College level has made me grow tremendously, and it helped me learn responsibility. And it was through mentors and my coaches helping me learn responsibility. So we have such an important job to mold these athletes, these students athletes, on the court and off the court as well.
Yeah, great point. And you brought up something, that transition out of athletics is huge. I know I've seen it with my own son. I've seen it with other people I've worked with, where your identity becomes so much of soccer or basketball or wrestling, right? That's who you are. And then all of a sudden you're in that senior year of high school, maybe, or college, whatever level it is. And I've heard pros talk about this. I think there was a documentary called The Weight of Gold, right?
The Weight of Gold, exactly.
And they talked about that, these are high level Olympic athletes talking about, what do I do when I'm done? What's the transition? And, they have a lot of resources, right? The average high school player, the average college player doesn't have those resources. And they've made their way through high school or college, whatever, being known as, Itzik, the soccer player, right? Or G, the basketball player. And that's what they identified with. And when they lose that, it's a struggle. So while we're not psychologists and psychiatrists, we can help with some of the skills we're putting in there to kind of level set and prepare people for that transition phase as well, right?
Really. Yes.
I think you hit it spot on. You hit it spot on, Gary. Is that it's our identity, and
Yeah.
at some point when you attach your identity to something intangible, such as a sport, well, when the sport goes away, well, now who am I? Who am I?
Yeah.
What do I stand for? And that's a lot. And I could tell you from experience, a lot of college guys that now think about it. To play college soccer, well, you had to be a badass growing up, and you had to be one of a really good high school player, and then to be able to play college soccer for 4 years. Well, that was your entire life, and then it's gone.
Yeah.
Now what? So if you didn't spend the time figuring out who am I, which by the way will only make you a better player. It'll only make you a better player if you have a very close relationship with your core values. But if you don't put in the time to really figure out what your core values are and what you stand for, well, then this stuff can get really challenging. And I don't know any player. I know I struggled with it. I absolutely struggled with it because I was a soccer player. That's how I identified myself. And when that went away, it was challenging. Now I stuck around the game. I've done business around the game, and found a way to combine certain passions of mine. But
Yeah.
other players really struggle with that, and I think that's something that you said spot on, Gary. You're right. It's
And
that's our
even
identity.
before that too, I think it's, G, I think even before that, I've worked with athletes who have put so much like identity into their sport and then tied that into a specific goal, right? And so there's a wrestler, Jay Albus, who's a two-time national champion wrestler, and he spoke to me about being kind of so consumed at one point with being a wrestler and his identity tied up into that, and his identity of being a wrestler, and the progression is to hit this level of being a national champion. And the pressure was immense on him internally. He put it on himself.
Yeah.
He lost in the finals, right? And he told me how he felt like a deer in the headlights when he was on that mat. It was a different world because the pressure was, I have to win this to kind of keep my identity where it was, right? To keep my identity of who I am. And after he lost, he went back and did some reflection and really got a new mindset and was able to come back next year and say, for him, wrestling is what I do. It's not who I am, right?
Yeah.
I'm a brother, I'm a friend, I'm a boyfriend, I'm a husband, whatever I might be. I have all these other things that make my life what it is. And so this is important to me, but not that much, right? It's not the end of the world, right? And so if I lose that match, I still have a home to go to. I still get meals. I still all these things. So it's that balance, and that's a struggle for kids. So the more that we can teach them a little bit about how to put this into perspective and how to work with it, there's value there as well.
I agree with you, Gary. And I was just about to say that too. And I wanted to know you guys' opinion. So most times I tell my athletes, you are not a basketball player. You are a person that plays basketball. Basketball is not your entire identity. Basketball is what you do, like you said, Gary. So what's your opinion on that? Well, Gary, you just mentioned your opinions on Itzik. What's your opinion on that saying that you say to athletes? You are not a soccer player. You are a person who plays soccer. Soccer is not who you are, is what you do. So what's your opinion on that, Itzik?
I have mixed feelings about that. And I'll tell you why. Because in my core, who I am, a very intense person. All right. And so when I go in, I go all in. That's kind of just how I am. That's how I do things. Now, I understand that sometimes you got to take a step back and put things in perspective. But when you're in it, it's hard for me to separate from that. Especially now, it's easier for me to release from my my outcomes, right? And separate myself from my results. But when you're in the mix and you're 18 years old and you're trying to play professional, you have to be careful. You don't want to separate yourself too much because in some people that may translate as a form of weakness. I read a book once called The Goldmine Effect, which studied why certain players succeed. And they did this entire study of geographically, why are 50 of the top 100 women golfers from South Korea? Why are the top distance runners from a certain village in Africa? Even though, and it's not just all, it's not just genetic, right? Because the village next door looks exactly the same, and their calves are, higher, whatever it may be, whatever those things that make them better. But there's more that goes into it because they own their identity, right? They live it 100%. So it's hard for me sometimes to say, hey, you know what, let's back up from that and not be that person. But it's important sometimes to learn. And if you're not aware of it, if you're not having discussions about it, and you don't find that happy balance for you, then it gets dangerous. So for me, the way I go about it, G, is that if you want to identify with being, I am a soccer player, fine. But what does that mean to you? And that's where the answer lays that makes it important. I don't care if you say I am a soccer player, but I'm also, or I do it in a way that I can be a leader to my friends and family, and and implement those other things. Because I know that if I take away, if I make that separation for him, that I'm not a soccer player and it's okay, that might not translate and resonate the same with every single individual. So
You're absolutely right.
Yeah, it's a
see.
balance, right? I mean,
It's a
it's a
balance.
really fine balance, because I'm with you. I
Yeah.
agree. It's a very fine balance between being all in. You got to be all in, right? You got to be 100% all in, and
But
then
what does
you
all
also have
in
to.
mean to you? That's
It
the
means
question.
that.
What does all in mean to you?
Well, here's what I think. I think the key is, if you love the sport, can you fall in love with the process that takes you to where you need to go, right? And more eyes on the process. You keep your eye on the goal, always on the goal. At the end of there's a big goal here, but you got to keep your eyes on the process. And if you fall in love with the process, then because in life you're one blown out knee away from not playing basketball again, right? So, but if you fell in love with the process of doing all the work, then you can transition to other things in life, right? So, but it is, and again, it's a delicate thing, because when you're in it, you feel like that's everything about you. The trick is to try to feel like that and still know that I can build comfort in my world if this is not here for me, right? I can build comfort in my world.
I
It's
agree.
tricky. There's
Right.
there's no magic bullet. It's working with
Right.
individuals to figure out how to do that.
You got to know the person
I
you're
want to
working
share.
with. And
I'd
hold on,
love
give me
to
one.
share. Yes, go.
Oh, sorry. And I think we all had a conversation, I think 2 weeks ago, where we were saying, like, from the MVP process, when you're in school and you have a test, you are fully a student. You are studying, you are working on that test, you are taking that test. You're not worried about the soccer game you have later on. You are fully immersed in your schoolwork. When school is done and you're on that soccer field and you're on that basketball court, you are completely focused on basketball at that time. You're not worried about an argument you had with your boyfriend, girlfriend. You're not worried about the test that you thought you bombed. So like you said, you have to know who you're talking to, and the person has to know where to shift their focus. You're in school, you're focusing about school. You're on the court, you're focusing about your sport. You're with your family on a Disney vacation. Be with your family. Soak up the moment, so you need to understand how to be able to focus on different aspects of your life and fully be there at the present moment.
Be where your feet
That's
are,
a
right?
great
We
point.
talk about all the time. Be where your feet are, and that's the key message.
Yes.
And you can do multiple things. You can't do multiple things exactly at the same time, but if you can be where your feet are, then you can do what you need to do there. And so you can be all in soccer player, and you can be brother and whatever else. And there's the interview. I think I apologize for the name. It's either Jordan Falcone or Jonathan Falcone, and he was a Yale lacrosse goalie. And he told a story. He's now a naval commander, right? Young kid too. He's like in his 30s. And he talked about that being where your feet are. And he was talking about how he used to go to work in the morning. He put on fatigues. He'd drive to work. He'd go to work, do his daily work, come back home in his fatigues. And then, he'd transition out, take his things off and go to work. And he came home one day and his wife said, "Oh, look at the bathroom I just painted." And he was standing there with his hands behind his back, like in military position. And he's like, "Yeah, you look, how many coats you take there? It looks like there's need another coat. Oh, you missed a couple of spots here." He was in that mindset of still being at work. And so for him, he told a story about how he started to look for a trigger. And so he would change out of his uniform before he got in his car to drive home. And he would have that transition home. And now he could be completely present in his life there as a wife. Same thing we're talking about here. If you're playing basketball, you got to be all in at basketball, not anywhere else, which is a challenge for young kids. Right now, as a coach, we all know that it's a challenge to get them focused. I mean, I got like a bunch of kids who just talking, and we have to have that trigger of, okay, you're stepping on the mat now, you strap on your strap, and now everything else is gone, and you transition to here. So I think, that's kind of one of the things that we're talking about, being where your feet are.
Yeah. And Itzik, I know I cut you off, so I know you had a good point too.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I just wanted to. The stuff you're saying is so strong in order to have a good life, like we're talking about. And Gary, you're absolutely right. When I asked you what is it to be all in, well, that's what I meant. To be all in is to be all in. That's a personality characteristic. So I'm all in when I'm doing homework. I'm all in when I'm hanging out with friends. I'm all in when I go to the beach, and I'm all in when I perform in my sport. And that's what I mean when I asked you, what does it mean to be all in? Well, that's being all in. That's being present. And if you can get used to being 100% immersed in whatever activity you're doing, it will be that much easier for you to be 100% immersed in your sport when you're doing that, because you've been practicing it every moment of the day. So when it comes time to now put on your boots, right, or put your chin strap on or lace up, well, you've been 100% all in with everything else you've been doing all day. So it's going to be that much easier for you to translate that into your sport, which will translate into you being more effective and more productive in your sport. And that's what I mean when I say all in. And that's why this stuff doesn't get turned on and off. It's a personality. And so when a player, G, you asked me as a player, how do you make that differentiation? I don't, because by doing this stuff that we're talking about now, you don't have to.
Yeah.
The story I was gonna share there is that, I was having a conversation with a 12-year-old kid yesterday, and I told him, very simply, love the game, right? Love everything about the game. So you have a game tomorrow. What time's the game? Oh, well, I don't know. Do you know where you're playing? I'm not sure. Just okay. Well, if you're gonna experience the game, you got to know what time you're playing, so you could start imagining and figuring out what's gonna happen. I want you to love the game so much that you're shining your boots the day before, and you're setting up your jersey, and you're fixing your bag, and you're making sure that everything's ready to go come game time. And you know what you're gonna eat. Now, nothing I said has anything to do with the game. And maybe he'll go on to play college soccer, be a professional. Maybe he won't. But by doing the work before, like Gary, like you talked about, the process of being organized, the process of respecting, you take care of your cleats will take care of you, right? Giving to other people and being of service to them, they will be there for you tenfold. And it's very, very important that they do everything around the game, not just the game itself. And that's how you learn certain life lessons. That's the process I'm talking about. Fall in love with everything about the game. I honestly, for me personally, I think I loved everything about the game more than I love the game itself. I love everything about the game. I love going to stadiums. I love going to stadiums not for the game. When you walk through the tunnel and then that overwhelming feeling when you see a big stadium and the beautiful grass and you could just smell the excitement. That's what I love about the game. And that you can't, you have that kind of passion. You bring that to whatever the hell you do, you're going to succeed. So that's what I try to teach my players, is to love everything about it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, man. I just know I'm fired up right now, and I just want to go play some sport because it's
same here.
Passion going here, man.
I was just thinking about
I'm ready to jump to this camera. Well, let's do this.
Thinking about a basketball court just now.
Yeah. But let's do this right now because G, you said MVP process. We talked about the process. Itzik, you talked a little bit about being able to transition. We talked about being where your feet are. Let's talk a little bit about the skills that we use to help these athletes. We don't have to go drill down specifically, but just in general, the skills that we use, because as I talked about at the beginning, focus, concentration, get your head in the game, be where your feet are. All these things are verbiage, right? And if we look at social media for a great example, every day on social media, there's another post telling someone what to do, right? Play hard, give 100%, get your head in the game, live by principle, all these things. I think what we do in our industry, what we do is we try to be more specific and give them the how, right? We try to give them the how, and we use skills and drills and things like that we've learned from some of my mentors. Like, let's give credit, right? Brian Kane is where we all met, right? Brian Kane is, he's the master of mental performance. And we kind of met through him and learned there, and we're kind of learning his skill process. And then we picked up from other people as well and what we have on our own. Let's talk a little bit about some of the things that we specifically do with our kids to help them. That's tangible, things they can take away, that they do take away and grow from. So, talk a little about what you do, G.
So with me, as I said before, I'm huge on goal setting. So I know one of the goal setting is not really part of what we learned with Brian, but some of the things that he teaches in his course, in his program, I could take a lot of things out of it. So one of the things is process over outcome. Athletes have goals and their main focus is the goal. But what are you doing? And this is stuff we just talked about. What are you doing every single day to get yourself to that big goal? So a lot of athletes, they think about, okay, I want to play college ball. Okay, but what are you doing to get to college ball? What are the long-term goals? What are the short-term goals? And then what are the process goals that you're doing every single day to get there? And I think that's what really opened my athletes' eyes. Like, wow, I don't do stuff every day. Just the other day, I just gave a new client and I asked her, I said, give me your schedule. Let me know what you do on a day-to-day basis. So she broke it down in 2 ways, days that she don't work and days that she do work. And I know one of her goals is to start on her college basketball team, and she's a sophomore. So I looked at her schedule. Nothing in her schedule had anything to do with getting better on the court, whether it's a physical thing or a mental thing. Nothing in her schedule had anything to do with how she's going to get better today so she could be a starter come November, October. So I think it's just the process, teaching the athletes to process goals on how to achieve the outcome goals. Another thing is mental rehearsal. I think that's one of the key drills or tools that athletes do not know about. I think they do it, but they don't realize how they're doing it or why it's important. So teaching athletes mental rehearsal, just to make sure that they understand, hey, if I could see it in my mind and translate that to the court, then that's going to help me a lot. And I could spend hours, just like Itzik, I could spend hours on just this main topic. Mental rehearsal is one of the key tools that I teach my athletes. And again, a lot of athletes do not know about this. And this is why we are so important to give these athletes these tools and strategies that they have no idea about. So top 2 would be the goal setting where it comes to process over outcome, and mental rehearsal. Those are my top 2 things.
You know, I think goal setting is really cool to talk about, because that's one of the, if we're talking about the mental game, that's one of the things that's kind of everybody knows, right? We got to set a goal, we got to write it down, we got to look at it often. Everybody knows that. It's been around for a while. What you're talking about though, which I love, is the reverse engineering of that big goal, right? It's I have this big goal. Maybe it's to win a state championship. I was just with a bunch of my wrestlers this morning, and I know one of them's got his, he's locked in, man. He's locked in on next year, winning states, and that's cool. But the reverse engineering that process, when we start talking about what are the things I need to do on a daily basis so that I can achieve that, whether it's nutrition, whether it's working out, strength and conditioning, whether it's mental stuff, whatever it is, how do I schedule that into my day? And then, of course, as they get older and go to college, it's even more important to kind of how do you balance it in your schedule. But what are the things we need to do and make sure that those everyday goals align with that big goal, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something that's a tactical thing that you guys are teaching that most athletes don't have. They have that goal and they have stuff to do every day, but they're not always putting those things that align together. And that's a huge value in and of itself.
Absolutely. And one thing I want to add is the athletes need to set a benchmark. Where are they now? And they need to be able to measure, are they really on their way to accomplish that outcome goal? See, the thing is, we have absolutely no control over the outcome goal. We may influence it, but we can't absolutely control it. Now, the process goal, that is completely underneath our control. We have total control over the process goals. So that's what we need to focus on the most, because we have control over it, So when you're doing these process goals, what's a goal you have a month from now to know that you're on your way to help you achieve that outcome goal? What is the goal you have 2 months from now? You need to be able to measure yourself along the way, because if you don't measure yourself, how do you know you're getting better? How do you know? So that's one thing. Another thing athletes don't really put into consideration. How do I know that I'm getting better? What do I look like now, and what am I supposed to look like a month from now? And a month from after that. So when it's 3 months later, compare yourself to month 1 to month number 3. Like, how did you change and how are you getting better?
Yeah. Itzik, what about you, man?
First of all, G, I want to tell you, spot on, man. I think that's awesome. Good for you. I think it's awesome. I couldn't agree more. That awareness is so critical. And you said it exactly right. If you don't know, I told a kid the other day, if I tell you that you have a pair of, you have a pair of Yeezys in your closet, right? But you don't know that you have them in there. What good does it do to you? Oh, it's the shoe you've always wanted, this and that, but you don't even know that you have it. So what good is it? If you can't measure it, if you don't know, if you can't name something, if you can't put a finger on it and say exactly where you are right now and exactly where you were this time last week, then you might be growing, you might be going down, but it doesn't matter if you're growing if you don't know it. Mm-hmm. And it's so important to have a conscious idea of where you are. Mm-hmm. And that self-awareness is as important as anything else we've talked about or anything else we will talk about if we talk for 10 more hours. So I'm really happy that you shared that. And it's important. Gary, to answer your question of what you asked, something that I do, obviously I have my own personal, I know that through Brian Kane, he has his 10 pillars, and I've created my own 10 pillars for performance, mental performance mastery. And one of the things there in regards to the goals and the dreams that you've mentioned, and then I'll go on to something else, is that, you know, when I start working with a player, first thing I say, hey, what do you want to get out of this, man? What are you after? What do you want? What do you want to get out of the game? What are your goals? What are your dreams? I make it very vague. So then on a whiteboard, I write down all the things. I want to play pro. I want to do this. I want to score. I want blah, 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 whatever. I just start listing. I said, let your mind run. Let it go. Feel free. Just start saying stuff. Bang, 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 bang. I write them all down. And then ask him, I'm going to put a G or a D next to each one of these. You tell me what's a goal and what's a dream. You know, and then we start that conversation. And what we recognize is that a bunch of these things are dreams. Now, a dream is something that you want, but you can't even fathom the idea of how this is going to unfold. Whereas a goal is something that you know, and you have a game plan, a process on how it's going to happen. You can explain to me very specifically. So then we start working, okay, well, if this is a goal of the dream, how do we turn this into a goal? And I think that kind of ties into the stuff that you're saying, but these players need to have that awareness and understand, don't just have dreams, because people have dreams. People our age and older than us have held on to certain dreams their entire life, and it doesn't freaking matter, because they're not going to do shit with it, because it's just a dream. They never transferred it into a goal. And I think that's kind of the stuff that you were talking about there, G.
And a dream with a plan and action, it becomes a goal, right? And it becomes more of a reality. So that's awesome. And I think we're, you know, the three of us and most of us, we're all doing the same thing, right? We're doing some kind of goal planning. We're doing, you know, we're doing, what are they, you know, aspiration. Sometimes the word goal kind of sometimes messes with me sometimes. And I like to sometimes look at aspirations, like, what do you want to aspire to be? And one of the things I think that's important is also the why, right? Is understanding why. So like, to your point, Itzik, when I do similar thing, when I ask people what their goals are and they give me what they want to accomplish, I go to why. And I kind of go, sometimes I'll go 3 deep with them. You know, I want to be a state champion. Why? Well, because I want to get the gold medal. Well, why? Why is that important to you? Right? Well, because, you know, I've been doing this since I'm a little guy, and, you know, all my other friends, and I kind of be, you know, we're at their level or above their level, and I want to be there. Well, why is that important to you? Well, because it makes me feel good, and I get the recognition I want from my family and my friends. And okay, and we get to a point where we really understand the intrinsic value of that goal. What does it really mean to you? And, you know, I always say to my guys, if you can understand, if you have a strong enough why, it doesn't really make a difference how. You'll find a way how.
Yeah, absolutely. And
right?
I think
so
that's
I try to ask him that all the time, is why, and then how. Then how are we going to do it? And that's, to your point, G, is that's how we start reverse engineering. How are we going to do it? Well, we're going to do it by lifting 3 days a week, right? We're going to do it by giving up television, you know, 3 days a week, and we're going to be doing some work at that time, or giving up social media. I mean, I work with a guy who, I want to pull my hair out of my head because the dude's always on social media, and I'm like, you know, and he's like, well, I need time to do this. I'm like, well, give up the social media, bro, and you can do it. So the why, it's the what. What's the goal? What do you want to accomplish? It's the why. Why is it important to you? And then it's the how, right? And then sometimes I'll even go to what if it doesn't happen? You know, what will that look like? What will you feel like? And again, just to build that intrinsic value in the importance of it. So I think we're all doing the goal setting stuff. And
I think that's a great point, Gary, especially when you ask the whys. Once you get down to that final why, you will be able to determine if they're motivated by external things or internal things. And when an athlete is motivated by the internal things, they are more committed. But when they're kind of motivated by external things, it could be there, you know, sometimes, but it's that internal motivation that really gets that person to go out there and achieve their goals. And so the reason why I start with goal setting is because we create a plan. Now we know the exact plan. And when it comes to accomplishing your goals or trying to, you know, go through the plan, you're going to fail. You know, you're going to have doubts. You're going to have that negative self-talk in you. Then you're not going to have the right routine and habits in place. So that's why when I start with goal setting, I can start to put in the things that we learned from Brian. Okay, what are your habits? What are your routines? You need to understand, you know, process over outcome. You need to understand motivation. You need to understand commitment. So again, that's why I start with that goal setting, and then I implement what I learned from Brian in between there. Because again, while you're chasing your dreams, you're going to hit some walls. You're going to feel like, I don't want to do this no more. You're going to ask yourself, why did I even start? And that's where that motivation comes from. That's where the discipline comes from. You're going to have some highs, you're going to have some lows. So that's why I think this program that we're in is very important. And what we do is very important, because we can input what we've learned into a person's strategy, you know? So yeah, that's my thing when it comes to goal setting and mental performance.
The challenge, Gary, also, I want to touch up on that real quick. And one of the
Yeah,
things
man.
that you had mentioned, Gary, when you asked about, is that a lot of stuff that we talk about is very concept related. And is it all true? Yeah. Is it all important? Absolutely. But a lot of it is very, it's kind of, it could be a little heavy, a little bit big. For us, it's not, because this is what we do. We walk in this every single day. But when you introduce these concepts to like a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, sometimes the first time they've even, so what I try to do is give a little bit of that, but then give actually a technique. And one of the things that I've been doing, and then through Brian Kane's process, we've called it BFS, which is body language, focus, and self-talk. Now, that's something that I can introduce to a kid, and he can do it tomorrow. He can do it, that
Yep.
day, because it's something very tangible. It's very easy to digest. So first thing, what's your body language look like? And what I do is I tell him, hey, kid, I want you to stand up right now. I want you to start dancing. Start dancing, and I want you to be sad at the same time. Do it. Go. And I'll put some music on. He'll start dancing. He'll start moving around, right? And I say, try to be sad. You can't do it. You can't do it, because you can't dance and be sad at the same time. Your body, you're sending a message to your body like, okay, we're happy. So what do you look like when you're playing well? Shoulders up, chest up, shoulders pinned back, looking around, checking two, right? You can start seeing yourself when you're playing well. Do that. Don't wait to play well in order to feel good, and then you will play well. And so I tell them there's so many things that you can do before the game even starts. Any state that you want to be in, you can control by those three things. So the first is body language. The second is focus. What are you focusing on? You're focusing on things that you cannot control, like the weather, your opponent, positioning, or are you focusing on things that are in your control, like how hard I'm going to go and completing my passes, playing simple, whatever it may be. And then the third thing is self-talk, which I say, stop. I tell my players all the time, stop listening to yourself and start talking to yourself. We cannot control our thoughts. All we can control is what we think about our thoughts. And we have thoughts that run through our mind all the time. We're on this call and we've had certain thoughts, and people listening on to this podcast have been tuned in, and then they've had other thoughts, right? It's just natural. It's human. That's how our brain works. But when you're playing your sport, stop talking to yourself, stop listening to yourself, and start talking to yourself. So you can't have two thoughts at the same time. So when you have a negative thought, bang, you come in there with, hey, I got this. And I have my players create a mantra. I got this. I'm a beast. I put in the work. Let's go next play up, whatever it may be. You start doing that, then the negative thought goes away. And if you can control your body language, which you can check at any moment, you can catch yourself on the field. Oh my God, my shoulders are down. Okay, let me get up. Bang, right away. Something changes. You control what you focus on, and you control in the way to talk to yourself. You're going to determine the state. All right. And what all these athletes are after is we're after confidence. Because like you said, no one can promise you to play well. No one can promise you to score. No one can promise you that you're going to win the game. That's all uncontrollables. All right. We cannot control that outcome, but you can control yourself. And if you can control yourself, you have more control on what the outcome is going to look like. So we're after a state of confidence. That's what these players want to feel. We want to feel confident in what we do. So why wait for something to happen in order to feel confident? I'm telling you, do something that will make you feel confident. Yeah. And by doing that, that's how you're able to put yourself in that state and get the results that you want, or not. But damn it, you're going to have a hell of a lot better of a chance.
I absolutely agree with
those
you.
Are great. Those are great techniques that you're doing too, man. I love the dancing thing. That's a great tangible exercise that they can do. They can really see, that their emotions, they can dictate their emotions and not let their emotions dictate them. So that's awesome. And
exactly.
And you talked about control. You talked about controlling things you can control. I start with that most of the time. With everything I do is literally making a list, piece of paper, draw a line down the middle, things I can control, things I can't control. And I go through that with the kids, whether it's a team or individuals, and I'll have them do that often. I may ask them to do that before a big match or before a big fight or before a big game, and just what can I control? Like, I know I can't control the fans. I know I can't control the weather. I can't control the other team. I can't control if they cheat. I can't control all the things, but I can control my attitude, my effort, and those things. So that leads to what you're talking about, Itzik. And I mean, we've, you guys have given already, like in a short period of time, we've already talked about body language, self-talk, focus. We talked about developing goals. We talked about be where your feet are. We talked about controlling the controllable. And these are all the things, these are all the mental skills, whether you call them pillars or you call them skills or you call them, building blocks or whatever we want to call them. These are all the things that that mental performance is bringing to young athletes or to athletes, right? And that's what we're trying to impart on them, is giving them tangible things to take away. So let's shift gears a little bit. And I know that some of us also work with with coaches, and some of us have been coaches, and I mean coaches outside of mental performance, right? We've coached the sports. And have you guys seen any, what's the acceptance you've seen with coaches? Are they like, hey, this is great mental performance, bring it in, or do they feel threatened, or they think that they're doing it themselves, or because I want to get a message out to the coaches too, that that we're there to help your athletes and your programs improve, right?
Yeah.
We want to do the things that you don't have time for. You may even know some of the things, or a lot of the things that we're talking about. What we've done differently, we believe, is broken it down into action steps, right? Just the same way you teach how to shoot a free throw, right? You bend your knees and you follow through, and your elbows got to be pointing in a direction, and your eyes are focused on the rim, right? We do the same thing with mental performance. And so I just want to, what is your interaction with coaches, and how have you worked with those guys, and what's the acceptance been? G, you want to start?
Yeah, sure. I was waiting for you to pick someone. So
I like pick you because I saw you first. That's all.
Okay.
And you're better looking than Itzik anyway. So.
Yeah. So my
true.
interaction, my interaction has been, so coaches will come to me. I haven't really directed my focus towards coaches. It's just been the parents and the athletes themselves. So coaches do come to me, and there's one coach in particular who is just obsessed and loves how I teach his athletes. And this is actually a boys team, a boys AAU team. And he loves it. He understands, like, he's one of the coaches that really care about his athletes. And he noticed, the body language, like Itzik was saying, and he noticed that these kids are lacking confidence. So he's the one that kind of reached out to me and say, hey, I need you to help me. So, working with a few coaches, I think 2 weeks ago, reached out to another coach, actually AD of an actual school in Berks County, because their whole basketball season actually they didn't have basketball season due to COVID. So I reached out to them. I let them know who I was. I let them know I was from the area and what I do, and I have not heard back from them. And I'm like, wow, this is very shocking, because not only did I reach out to them and let them know what I do, I told them I'll do this absolutely free, because your girls didn't have a basketball season. So why not train the mental part of their game so they're ready for next season? And I did not hear back from that person. I'm like, wow, that's a shocker, because why not prepare your girls for the next season? So the main coaches that do reach out to me are the ones who are doing the skills and development coaching, the one-on-one coaching, because they have that 1 hour and 15 minutes with that one athlete, telling them, okay, I need you to do this, I need you to do that. And that's where that athlete opens up a little bit more to that one-on-one coach and say things like, I'm not confident enough to do this in a game, or I can't use my left hand. So those one-on-one coaches are the one who are hearing the I can't, the I don't feel confident enough. When kids are in a team, they're not open enough to tell the coaches in front of everybody else, I don't feel confident. They're just sitting there like, okay, yes, I understand. Yes, coach. They're not confident enough to express how they really feel. But when they're working with that one-on-one coach who's working on the left-handed layup or pull-ups, that's where those coaches are hearing the I can't, or I wish I can, or my coach don't like me. They're hearing those conversations. So those are the main coaches who reach out to me and they say to me, hey, I have this kid who she's really good, but damn, she's in her head too much. Can you please help me? I'm like, absolutely. So when it comes to coaches who are coaching the entire team, I don't get much from them, but those one-on-one coaches who's working with those athletes, they are the ones who are like, I need you, please come help. So that's my interaction with coach, my interactions with coaches.
It's what about you, man?
I think that it's a great question, because it's very challenging, like you described. I've gotten both extremes, complete extremes. I got coaches that are all about it, and they're just reaching out and, hey man, I love this, I want you to talk to this team and that team, and da-da-da. And then I got others that are like, yeah, no, we already do that. And then I follow up with like, what exactly are you doing, or whatever. And like you said, Gary, maybe they feel like it's being challenged, that I'm challenging them, and maybe like they're insufficient or whatever it may be. But I think the biggest thing here, and why this is such an important and critical aspect of the game, is because they're just not educated enough. You see, the challenge that I have, the biggest challenge with this, is that I not only have to provide a service, I have to first educate them about the service that they don't even know even existed, and then provide the service for the thing I just educated them about.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the reason is because if you're a parent, or you're a player, and you want to get better, well, what do you need to do? I need to practice more, right? That's how we've been ingrained our entire life. Take a bag of balls, go to the park, and train more, right? So they'll go get a private coach. They'll pay for that. They'll go get a private coach and then put in the work that way, because it seems like that's an obvious direct. And what we do, it's not so direct. it's a little bit more vague, and it's taking time. It takes time. You have to educate the individual about the stuff that we talked about today, and then they'll understand. You know what? I didn't even know what I didn't know.
Mhm.
That's the challenge. Whereas I'm not playing well, I'm not good on my left foot. Well, I know what I'm not good at. So then they go and try to fix that, but they don't know what they don't know. So we have to educate them on what they don't know and then provide the service of what it is. So it's almost like twofold, and that's why it's so challenging.
Yeah.
But at the same time, what I've realized and recognized is if we take let's take an Olympian, right? 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I think maybe we've talked about this briefly. He had a coach, all right, a figure skater. She had a coach. That coach was her strength and conditioning coach. It was her technique coach. It was her dietitian. It was her motivation coach. It was everything. It was one coach, wore all the hats. And then they said,
Yeah.
hey, you know what? I'll be, I can train you on your craft, but let's bring in somebody to do strength and conditioning. So now they brought that. So then that coach exists. And then they say, hey, you know what? The diet, that's a huge part of the game. Let's bring in a nutritionist. Okay, now I got that coach, right? And I think the very next one in line, not that it's not existing already, in Europe, at least in my sport, in soccer, every European locker room has somebody like us in their locker room. However, in US youth sports, it's not as prevalent. And I think that that's the next one in line where they realize, you know what? And I think that's the biggest one because it's the glue that ties everything together. It's the
Yeah.
glue that teaches you how to enforce what you're already working on. You can have a nutritionist, but if you don't understand the self-discipline and self-control, well, then what good is that nutritionist, right? And if you can have a strength and conditioning coach, but if you don't understand how to take care of your body and get the right sleep and having an intention going into each training session, well, then what good is that strength and conditioning coach? And I think that that's the next thing that's going to really blow up. And I'm seeing it personally on, following like ESPN FC and stuff like that. And players are starting to speak out and they're talking about the importance of mental health, not even mental performance, just mental health and how critical it is. And we as fans sit back and watch TV and we'll watch LeBron James and Steph Curry and we'll watch these guys on TV, right? Watch them play ball. And we think that their life is perfect. And no, it's not. And they're going through things. And those things affect the way they play. The only reason they're there is because they know how to shut that off and turn it on. But you know what? Sometimes that stuff can get overwhelming. And if you don't have the tools, you don't have the person in your pocket, right? I tell my players, hey, I'm your buddy, man. You put me in your pocket. I'm there for you whenever you need, right? I'm your secret weapon. I provide you to know what nobody else on the field knows. And when they understand that, and the players and the coaches and the parents really understand how important that is, that's when they reach out. And I think that this is something that's growing, at least in my industry. I'm seeing that it's growing and it's becoming more and more. There's more and more awareness for this. And that's why I'm so excited about.
I think it's everywhere. I think it's all the sports are starting to evolve to it, like you're saying. And we've heard it forever, right? Sports is 90% mental, 10% physical, but we train 90% of our time, or maybe more, on the physical and very little on the mental. And I would even argue that really, when you come down to it, to a basic science level, everything's 100% mental. Because I can't pick up I can't pick up this pencil without my brain telling me to pick up that pencil. So that's mental. So definitely there has to be more focus on the mental part of it. And it's coming along. I think for the younger kids, there's a certain level, maybe because it's just the way things always been, and a certain level of, they need a certain level of competency with their skills in their sport before they start to want to open their mind up to something else bringing in. And as you said, the highest level guys, they're all doing mental performance. The LeBron James, the Steph Currys,
absolutely,
the Michael Phelps of the world, and these great Olympians, they all have multiple coaches, and mental performance is one of them. So, no, you guys, man, this is great stuff. So as we begin to wrap up, let me go around this little horn here. It's a small horn. And what is the one message that you would have to, you're talking to a potential coach, you're talking to a potential parent or athlete that you're getting ready to do some work with? What's the one message you want them to know about what you do that's going to help them? Start with you, Itzik.
Yeah, sure. The way I go about it is that, hey, let's put in some work and let's identify some stuff, right? If we can't identify something, then how the hell are we going to fix it? If you don't know what's bothering you, if you don't know what's getting in the way of you performing at your highest level all the time, and are you performing at your highest level all the time? The answer is going to be no, right? It's always going to be no, because if they played as good as they always can consistently, then they would be at a different place. So let's identify that. And I use an example. Say, hey, if you walk into the nurse, right, you go to the doctor and you say, hey, if you can't tell me you got a sprained ankle.
Yeah,
Yeah, Itzik, you're
yeah,
zoning
his
out.
wife, his connection's going bad. We'll do some editing there.
Okay.
Hey, Itzik, can you hear us? There's never a show that this doesn't happen.
I know.
It's
He's
always
just going on and on.
It's always the cool guys who are sitting outside.
Yeah.
Sitting outside somewhere. Hey, can you hear us now? Itzik? Nah.
I can hear you, but my now.
All right, so when we do
your
this,
Wi-Fi, we didn't hear absolutely nothing. You just went off.
Oh, that sucks.
Yeah.
no, it's
All right,
okay.
can you hear
So
me now?
no, we can. That's the beauty of editing. The beauty of editing software is we can take anything out and we can do anything we want to. So answer the question again if we can hear you now, and then we'll go to G.
Okay. So what I was saying is, if I were to talk to any parent, any coach, the first thing I would ask them is, can you identify what's the problem? Can you identify why you're not playing at your full potential consistently? What's the mental barrier that's getting in the way? Most of the time, the answer is going to be no. Now, I use an example. I say, if you go to the doctor and you say, hey, you know what? If you can't tell him I have a sprained ankle, right? And he gives you Pepto-Bismol, it's not going to help your sprained ankle. You have to identify. You have to have the self-awareness to identify what the problem is in order to fix it, in order to move forward. And so the first thing I would say is, hey, do you know what's getting in the way? And if you don't know and you can't identify and articulate exactly what's getting in the way, well, then let's have a conversation about that. Because there might be something very small that's being the problem that's not allowing you to play at your full level consistently, right? And so having the self-awareness to identify whatever the hell the problem may be is the first step. And by doing so, then we can move forward and progress from there. Because if there was nothing getting in the way, then you'd be playing at the top level every game. And if you were to do that, you wouldn't be where you are right now.
Right,
so that's the important part is self-awareness, identifying the problem, have a conversation about what's getting in the way. Once we figure that out, we can start removing some of these things, and everything becomes a lot easier for you to really reach your full potential and get everything you want to get out of this game or out of life.
Yeah.
That's
Absolutely.
awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. Good, G.
So with just like Itzik, so but I'll back up just a tad bit. With me, when it comes to my clients, and I think what we all have in common is that we truly have a passion for this. We love this. We could go on for hours about this when we've talked to our clients. And so what I try to do is just, first of all, build that relationship. I'm not, when I meet a potential client or when I talk to my client, I don't go straight into what I do or the business side. I create a relationship with them, let them know that, I see me in them, and just have a normal conversation about basketball, about life and whatever. And so how, Gary, the way you opened up this call is, I asked them, how many times have your coach told you to focus? How many times have someone told you that you don't have confidence? How many times has someone told you you need to concentrate more? And they say all the time and whatnot. And then I asked them, how has anyone effectively taught you how to do those things? And they say no. So I basically tell them, this is what I do, and the reason why I think I'm pretty good at this is because I've been there, I've done that. I've traveled the same road that you've traveled on. There were times I didn't have confidence. There were times where I felt like quitting. So I will be able to tell you from where I came from, and by using these strategies that I've learned to help you get to where you want to be. And another thing that I do is I ask them, where are you now? Where do you want to be? And they tell me, this is where I am now. This is what I want to do. And then in the middle, I say, okay, what is preventing you? Just like Itzik said, what is preventing you from getting there? And then they just list a whole bunch of things of what is preventing them to get there. And I start with the most important, and then I just work my way down to the least important. And again, with me, like you said, Itzik, they could call me anytime. They have access to my personal number. They can email me anytime, want to jump on a quick call. And I think that's what makes us so important, especially us three, because we truly care. We don't say, oh, you're calling me during non-business hours. There's no such thing for me. If you hire me as your mental performance coach, you're hiring me as your friend, your mentor, your teacher, whatever, you have total access to me. And that's what I love about doing what I do, because I build that relationship with them. When they're done with my services, I still talk to these kids. I still go to their games. You know, we build that friendship, we build that bond. You're just not a paycheck to me. Then I hate when other coaches do that. And I mean, I don't know if any coaches do that, but that's not what it's all about. We build that relationship. You are my client for life, whether you're paying me or not. We still have that bond together.
Yeah, I love it, man.
That's awesome.
You guys, one thing, man, that's going to be clear across this podcast is you guys care. You guys love what's going on with mental performance, and you love working with the athletes and making them better. So I think that's going to resonate. You know, I could go on, like you said, I can go on forever about this. My answer is going to be the same as you guys. You know, I try to say to people, you know, are you getting the most out of what you want, you know, from your game? And then we try to evaluate it, like you said, Itzik, and figure out how do we improve you. And to your point, G, you know, how do we get from where you are now to where you want to be? And that's the game plan and everything in between. And same thing with you. You know, I'm definitely their accountability partner, their sounding board. And, you know, it always delves off into other spaces too. I have a client, you know, I won't mention any names, but, you know, she's a high school athlete who, you know, typical, had a breakup with a boyfriend and affected her performance. And, you know, we did some routines on how she could physically leave that boyfriend and his problems in a locker, right? And just put it away and close the locker up and now go to practice and do your thing. And, you know, we could see, like, you know, we see them, we see their faces and we see the change. I see the change in like the beginning of the conversation, how's things going? And yeah, it was a rough time. It was a rough week, whatever. And we start talking about body language and self-talk and using positive words. And you can see the physical change in their faces. And that's rewarding, right? That's what we do. We coach, whether you're coaching T-ball, you know, skills, or you're coaching, you know, the Tom Brady, right? When you're coaching Tom Brady, it's seeing the change and seeing the growth in these athletes and people you work with. That's the reward, right? You know, again, we all want to get paid. We want to make a living. We all do that, right? But it's the reward is really seeing the growth. So absolutely. I'm with you guys, man. I'm with you guys on all that. And so listen, let's wrap it up by doing this. And then you guys, this has been a great little round table here. I don't know if it's actually round. There's only 3 people, but it's a table. It's an oblong table. We're going around it, but let's tell people how, because we're all in different areas, right? Itzik, you're in California, right? And G, you're down in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm over here in Northeastern California, in Connecticut. See, I said California because I want to be where the nice weather is.
Yeah, Itzik, you're showing off right now.
That's my positive self-talk, right? My positive is saying California instead of Connecticut.
Oh yeah.
Why don't we? Yeah, the pool. Yeah, nice. Why don't we tell people how they can get in touch with you, follow you on social media, and how they can reach out to you to get the benefits of what you guys are doing. So Itzik, tell us a little about exactly where you are and how they can get a hold of you.
So I'm in Los Angeles, California, but as you guys know, you know, we're able to do this nationwide. I got athletes that I work with, different states. You can follow me on Instagram at Mental Coach Pro. The website is mentalcoachpro.com. And my personal email is itzik at mentalcoachpro.com. So it's ITZIK at mentalcoachpro.com. And through the social media stuff, I try to put up some quotes and some tips and some, you know, commentary from other athletes and stuff talking about this stuff. So it's just a good thing to follow and kind of get your mind right going into weekends, games, or training sessions and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. G.
Yeah, so you all could find me on my Instagram. It is at I am mentally tough. So IAMMENTALLYTOUGH. So I am mentally tough, basically just spelled out. My website is called I Am Mentally Tough. So again, just all those words there, just put it in. There's no apostrophes or whatnot, just I Am Mentally Tough. Email is IamMentallyTough@gmail.com. So everything is basically spelled out the same way. And you can get a hold of me there. So I'll see you on social media, or I'll see you as a visitor on my website. I do have some nice I Am Mentally Tough gear, especially our headbands, which is the #1 seller. If you're a person who like headbands, just hop on to IamMentallyTough.com/shop. And there's tons of positive motivational gear, especially our headbands again, which is the #1 seller. So go ahead and get your.
I love it, man. She's not only doing mental performance, but she's hawking her gear too, man. That's good.
Yeah.
Oh,
Oh my God.
God.
Oh, I'm not sure if you see my I'm into
Her
town.
swag.
There you go.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah,
I need to
so
get me one of those.
Yeah,
I'll make
please
sure
do.
that I'll make sure we post all that information in the show notes too, so people when they check out the podcast, they can follow that and they can link directly to you guys. And because this is my podcast, but I'm also kind of a guest at the same time. You guys can reach me at tigersedgempt.com. That's our website, and coach at tigersempt.com is my email. You can reach me there. And on social media, I'm actually at coach_Gary_Tiger. That's how you can find me on Instagram. I'm going to change that, but for right now, that's how you can reach me. So all that'll go in the show notes. And listen, man, I appreciate you guys, and I love the fact that we were able to get together and do this. We know each other a little bit now, but I feel like I know you guys a lot better from this conversation. And I know that individual will have a lot more conversations. And I love the power of this too. It's like, because we're all learning, right? Everybody, in our craft, we always want to get better in our craft, and spending time with the two of you guys, number one, makes me jump, right? I want to just run through a wall when I hear some of you guys talk and the emotion, but also I learn different things, right? Like I learned about, having my kid dance and try to be sad at the same time. I love that, right? That's a takeaway for me. So we're taking away things from each other, and hopefully we can, add that to our our quiver, and have another arrow in our quiver that we can use to help these young folks.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, guys.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you
we're
so
signing
much,
off
Gary.
now. Thanks you for being here, and
Thank you, Gary.
I'll see you guys on one of our calls soon, and I'll get this podcast out, and we'll have it out, and hopefully it'll reach a lot of people.
Great. Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much,
guys.
Gary.
All right,
Have a good one.
Be good, man. Have a
Bye.
great day.
Bye, guys.